You were in that courtroom today. Of everything you heard, everything you saw inside and outside, what was your wow? What stuck out to you?
How badly the day went for Trump. Actually, I think his lawyers struggled in the opening statements. And it was really notable because the state put on a very convincing opening statement. And I think in particular what Todd Blanche ran into was the problem that he couldn't say what his client wanted him to say, that, you know, the feds didn't charge this case. And so he was left having to say things like, you know, this is President Trump. He's earned his title. We should all refer to him as President Trump. There was stuff about how, you know, he...
Who cares, right? This is a criminal trial, and the argument he's making is how you refer to Trump, what we call him by name. That was his big moment?
He led off with that, and I think that was striking. And I think everyone in the courthouse kind of looked around and thought, is he really going with this argument? He eventually segued into saying that Trump was ignorant of all of this and he couldn't be held accountable because this was all Michael Cohen's doing and he never signed off on the checks. And the one argument that Todd Blanche didn't make, which I have heard the Trump legal team discuss in previous days, was this idea about how voters weren't deprived of any information before the 2016 election because they wouldn't have been privy to the Trump organization's records in the first place. But none of that came up. It was all an opening statement for an audience of one, which was Trump.
Neil, you have been following every step of this since day one. What was your takeaway?
Very similar to Hugo. So, I mean, I think the Trump opening statement just felt really flat. I mean, there were three arguments that the opening statement made. One is it wasn't Trump's idea. Basically, it was Michael Cohen's idea to do all of this. And I'm sorry, Michael Cohen took out a home equity loan of thousands upon thousands of dollars on his home in order to pay off Stormy Daniels. No lawyer does that. Zero. The idea that he would have done it on his own, just out of the goodness of his own heart or something, thoroughly implausible. Second, you put on the screen before Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer's statement that I have a spoiler alert. There's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called a democracy. That is just legally a totally bogus argument because influencing an election is sometimes legal and sometimes illegal. It depends on how you do it. If you bribe someone to vote for you, that's illegal, even though it's influencing the election. Here, Trump is accused of trying to hide the gifts, essentially, to him and avoid the transparency that our campaign finance laws require. That's a crime every day of the week. Third, he says, well, Blanche says these payments are for purely legal expenses, legitimate legal expenses. And that, I think, is going to be a problem that we're going to hear a lot about over the next month, Stephanie, as the trial goes forward. Because as an attorney, the last thing you want to do is overpromise in your opening statement and tell the jury the evidence is going to show something, and then it doesn't actually turn out to show it. That's when you blow your credibility. Harry Litman made this point, our colleague, earlier today. Who's the witness who's going to testify that these payments were for legitimate legal expenses? It's just unthinkable. So I think a really poor way to start, which is why Trump has always been scared of not just the other trials, but this trial in particular.
David, what do you think?
I'm struck by how this trial has given us something that I didn't think we would ever see, which was, you know, Trump doesn't use email. He doesn't create a paper trail that shows you what he's thinking or what he did. Instead, he makes decisions in a room with a small number of loyalists, a lot of family members, and a few people who'd been with him forever. And that's why it was always sort of a hard nut to crack to try to get to explain Trump's motivations in a court of law or in a newspaper story. You had to get one of those few circle of people, few people in that circle who are with him. Now they have that. Michael Cohen, one of these people who've been with Trump forever, through a series of moves Trump made while he was president, as it alienated Michael Cohen, turned him into a witness for the prosecution. So we're going to hear in a courtroom somebody say, yeah, there were three people in the room with Trump, but I was one of them. And with David Pecker, maybe we were two of them. So we're going to have a sort of an instance I didn't think we would see for many years, that kind of person turning on Trump.
Then when the defense has their witnesses, who is Donald Trump going to have? Because this family man who supposedly, according to Donald Trump's team, was really just protecting his family, none of his family members showed up in court to be with him. It was Lawrence O'Donnell earlier who said even Jeffrey Dahmer, his mom and dad, they came to court every day of his trial. So if David, the only people who were ever in Trump's inner circle or the likes of a Michael Cohen or a David Pecker? What about his family? They're not in court. Are they going to be defense witnesses?
I don't think they are. I don't think Donald Trump Jr. might have been involved a little bit in this transaction as it was sort of entered into the Trump Organization's books and covered up. But I don't think they were really privy to this. And I don't see them calling those folks to make a case affirmatively that this was something good. I think what they're going to rely on is that the Trump team is going to rely on the idea that, there's a bunch of dots here, but we don't know enough to connect them. We don't know enough to say this was Trump's intent, which you really need as a non-lawyer. I think you need to prove this case.
Neil, do you think it makes a difference? Do you think the jury notices that Donald Trump is a man standing alone? We see other defendants show up with all sorts of family members and support to try to gain sympathy with the jury. Will it impact the jury in any way that nobody has shown up for Trump as of yet?
I'm not sure that the people in the spectator stands is going to make a huge difference, but I think a closely related point, Stephanie, will, which is basically the witnesses against Trump, like people like Pecker, people like Michael Cohen, these are all the people Trump hired or paid. They're all his Confederates. And yes, Trump's strategy is, Michael Cohen has no credibility. He lied to a court. But he's Trump's criminal. He's the guy that Trump brought in to start all of this in the first place. And so I do think that the jury at the end of the day is going to be left with, God, every person that seems to surround Donald Trump is a criminal or a liar or a scoundrel or all of the above. And in a way that's going to rub off on Donald Trump. And so I think that dynamic is definitely going to be at play here. And remember, there's a lot of charges here. There's 34 different counts. I mean, that's a big indictment. 34 is so huge. I mean, the super long double album by Taylor Swift from last Friday only has 31 tracks. It's an amazing record, by the way. But I mean, that just shows you this is a lot going on in this criminal trial. And today we started to see the prosecution lay out those first three key elements that Trump paid off the doorman. He paid off one National Enquirer story, and now he's paying off another one, the Stormy Daniels.
All right, let's talk about David Pecker, right? Former publisher, owner of the National Enquirer and a number of other magazines through American media. He has known and been entangled with Donald Trump for decades, right? David Pecker is the king of New York tabloids, and nobody loves to be splashed across those tabloids or have bad stories about him hidden more than Donald Trump. The fact that Pecker is the first witness for the prosecution, what did he tell the jury today? And has Trump said, we know Trump obviously goes bad on Michael Cohen every day and yesterday. What's he said about David Pecker? They have been friends and allies for decades.
Yeah, Pecker as the first witness was really interesting because at trial, you start with your most important witness and you end with your strongest witness typically. And I think this gave us a flavor of where this case is going to go. And I think it was very telling in the opening statement from the prosecution that they wanted to make this link directly to the election. The whole stand-up, the whole groundwork leading up to Pecker was Trump entered into this catch and kill scheme to benefit the campaign. It was all to benefit the campaign. It was to get positive coverage. It was to attack political opponents. And it was for Pecker to be the eyes and ears of the campaign for negative stories that could be coming down the pike. And this is clearly where it's going. Pecker on the stand was being asked about how he operated and how he orchestrated the catch and kill schemes, how over $10,000 that individual editors had to come and, ask him if they could spend that kind of money on sources and trying to get stories. And Pecker will narrate the entirety of the relationship between Trump and him, AMI, and National Enquirer, and I think that's what makes him such an important witness.
Or the prosecution is hoping he will be that narrator, Neil.
Absolutely. I think that's the I think aim of the prosecution. It's also, by the way, just chronologically, you start with Pecker because Pecker's the guy who's negotiating early with Trump, even well before he's president, to adopt this catch and kill strategy, or checkbook journalism is how it was referred to today. And look, everyone would love to have newspapers in catch and kill situations. If you're a candidate or any kind of high official or, corporate CEO, whatever, if Biden would love to, I'm sure, have someone who's going out and buying every story about his son and making it so none of them could be published, because that's what Pecker did here. And I think we're going to see more from Pecker. He just testified for a nanosecond today because one of the jurors had a emergency dental problem. So it's the next day or two that we're really going to see that testimony come out.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.